Lucidity. This is a push your luck dice game. It is for 2 to 4 players, also with a solitary variant. I don't know why, for some reason I saw the image of the cover, I thought like, oh cool, maybe a game they can play with my daughters that are 5 and 7, because they like dice games, push your luck, roll and re-roll. Then I looked at the art and I thought, maybe not. Maybe not just yet. The art is definitely intense. It's pretty horror-ish art. I mean, I like it, and the look of the components is very good. The components are not super durable. They definitely are on the flimsy side of things, but they do look great, and I guess, you know, if you keep good care of them, then it will last for as long as you need them to. So a push your luck game in which players are dreamers and they roll dreams. Dreams means dice in this game. That kind of like annoys me a little bit. Just call them dice. Anyways, you draw dice, you roll them, you use them to activate effect. And as a dreamer, you're trying to collect 15 points here. There are cases in which you may turn into a nightmare. Yes, you may turn into one of those guys up there. And that will make you play completely differently from the way you played as a dreamer. Now, how the game works is you have this glass bead here that you could put on or next to your player's board, which really is the heart of the game. We can push the ugly nightmares aside for a second. And at the beginning of your turn, you will choose the track that you want to use. You can use any of these 3 tracks, and you place this glass bead on the first space. It's pretty big. I don't know. Yes, you can still tell which box the glass bead is on, but it's just kind of like ridiculously big in my opinion. Suppose I decide that I want to place it here. When you choose one of the 3 tracks, you place the glass bead on the first space. Basically, once you're done with your turn, with this phase of your turn, you can choose then to roll again, in which case you move it here and you roll a different number of dice and a different number of dice, unless you're forced to rest this, unless your turn is over early. So usually, once you're done here, you can choose if you want to end your turn there or roll more. If you're here, or if you're exhausted, we'll see how that happens, then you are forced to rest and that ends your turn. Anyways, you place it on the first space on one of your tracks, and then you pick up the bag and you draw the corresponding number of dice. These dice look really neat. They're custom dice, they're translucent, different colors, different combinations of symbols, and you have a player aid that tells you what combinations you find on each type of die. So I have a 4 there. I draw 4 dice, and here we go, 4. After you draw, you always choose 2 dice and you put them back in the bag. I suppose that I wanted to keep a green one instead. I wanted to put back a green and a blue and remain with a green and blue. And then you roll the dice that are still in your hand after you put 2 back. After you roll them, you resolve them. That is, you put them on your board, you place them on your board depending on the symbol that they showed. Now, it is also possible to re-roll dice. If you have dice in this area here, which is your play area, then you consume a die from here, you spend it, and the spent die goes on the corresponding nightmare card. So if I had, for example, this here from a previous turn and I wanted to re-roll a die here, then I would spend this one and I would put it on the card of the green nightmare. You store them there. Unless that card is being claimed by another player, in which case, when you spend a die to reroll, you simply dump it back into the bag. But in this case, I decide not to reroll and simply to use my dice. And I decide, for example, well, I decide this one with this symbol here, this is like points, I place it here, and that is good already. Basically, most dice have only one side with 1 point. The red die also has a side that shows 2 points, and if you have that, then you place it here as an immediate reminder that that counts as 2, and that is very good. On the other hand, red dice can also be dangerous. In fact, let's see what happens. As I said, once you have your combination of symbols, then you simply will place them in any order that you choose on the corresponding space on your playmat. This symbol here goes here, and if that track is ever filled, you lose the game. It's as simple as that. In a two-player game, that can be pretty anticlimactic because it may mean that, well, the other player didn't do much, but you simply were particularly unlucky, or you got a wrong combination of dice and you lose the game. Very anticlimactic, even for the winner. Exhaust with the Z's symbol. So if you are making some Z's, that's fine. If this is filled, then you cannot choose to roll again in that turn. You simply have to rest. That is the end of your turn. By the way, at the end of your turn, you will be allowed to either clean up this row entirely, take all of the dice that are here and dump them into the bag, or to remove a die with an eye on it and dump it back into the bag. The dice with the eyes go in this section here, again depending on the color. So blue eyes go here, and you resolve the corresponding effect. For example, here, when you place a blue die there and you draw a die, you draw and roll a dream. Draw and roll a die and place it with your unresolved dice, so you will resolve it that turn. The green one, reroll one dream of the next player's choice. So you ask the next player, which die on my board should I reroll? They choose one, and you simply pick it up and reroll it. Of course, this is very delicious to target for other players. They may want to reroll your two. If you have a yellow eye, if you place a yellow eye there, that is, you resolve it, then you rotate one Z's to its eye face. You don't move it, you just rotate it. And you're thinking, why the heck would that matter? Because there are effects that target eyes specifically. For example, if you have a red eye, then you place it, you have to place it here in this track here, and the effect is you may move one eye to the hunt space. So that can be pretty dangerous, frankly, but maybe you're very close to winning. You want to give a final push, you're okay taking that chance because you think you can win this turn. That kind of stuff. You really want to keep rolling. Once you're done doing this, if that area there is not exhausted, then you can go again, and I decide to go again, and this time is 6. So I draw 6. Suppose, there you go, I draw 6. I choose 2 to dump back. Maybe I'm okay rolling a red one. It's kind of dangerous, but not too much. And blue's not all that great, but I'll do it. This is a good example, actually. So this one goes here, this one goes here, and I may do that thing. Actually, I can't. And then I have these two dice that I will place here. There's a good example because when one of these rows is filled with, actually we have two-player games, it's filled with 4. With other numbers of players, it is filled when you have 3 dice there. But when a row is filled, then you become the nightmare of that color. In this case, in a two-player game, actually, in any number of players that is not 2, with 3, the row is filled, and I become a nightmare of the corresponding color. Then I take the card of the corresponding color, I clean up my board, I only leave the points, and now I play differently. Now when it is my turn, I don't go through this sequence here, choose a sleep track, draw, put 2 back, roll the other ones, and resolve them. I have different sequence. When it is your turn, as not as a dreamer anymore, which is a regular player, but as a nightmare, you can either consume power or send minions. Consume power is pretty powerful because it allows you to take dice of your color, in this case blue, from the other people's power track. So yes, if there is another player that has this kind of points from on their board, you're simply gonna take them and add them to your area, which is pretty powerful. Or you can send minions. This may happen if, for example, no one else has dice left on their tracks of the color that you can steal. To send minions, it means that you draw 2 dice from the bag, you choose one, and you give that one to another player. The player rolls it and resolves it. Hopefully you will draw dice again of your color so that you can then steal them later if they score them. There's also something else that you can do as a nightmare when it's not your turn. When any dreamer rolls an eye of the color that of your nightmare, the color that you now represent, you move it to your card as a point. So you steal them and turn them into points for you. Then you may draw 2 dreams, return 1 to the bag, and the dreamer rolls the other. So there is that effect. Other nightmares work in a similar way. They just trigger with slightly different symbols. For example, when a dreamer would resolve an I or a Z of imprisonment, then you move it to your card as a point. That remains the same. And then you move an I on their card to a Z space on their card. And you can see here how the other ones work. But basically it's a very different situation, which really much depends on what the other players are doing. Most likely other players will be trying not to roll dice of your color. When they're drawing dice from the bag, they will dump back the ones of your color. Because this way they don't give you dice, they don't give you effects, they don't give you points right there or points later in case you steal them from them. So the game ends when a player, well, the dragon to the game is triggered when a player reaches 15 points and everybody can still take a turn, and at that point the player with the highest total points is the winner of the game. The game may also end if there are no dreamers left, so everybody turn into a nightmare, in which case the game ends immediately and the winner is the player with the most points at that point. Hello y'all, yes, this is me. I know it's not easy to recognize me. It is one of those 2 times a year where I shave and get a haircut, but you can still tell it's me from my superior eloquence and my charming accent. Okay, time to talk about Lucidity. I like dice games and push your luck games, and especially games that are on that very simple idea, have a little bit of strategy. This game does that, and there are a lot of things that I like about Lucidity. As is, however, it has some reservations that prevent me from liking this game more than I do, from whoa, going all the way like, whoa, this is a great game. This is a good game when things don't go wrong, which is not always the case. Luck is fine. It's a dice game. I don't have any problem with that. I know what I'm gonna find when I start playing the game. But I do like game with a luck element that has some mitigation element. I can spend a resource. I can make some decisions that will allow me to decide what to do with my resources and that kind of stuff. Here I can choose whether to stop or not, or when I can. Sometimes the turn just ends because the turn ends, but I can make that decision. That is a fun decision in the push your luck department. But then once I roll, re-rolling is expensive. Not only that, I spend resources that then may go to you, so it's something you really don't want to do unless you're really desperate, and that makes luck mitigation not that easy to pull off. You're kind of like stuck a little bit with what you get. And then you have 2 elements of luck. One is the kind of dice that you draw, and then of course the results of the roll. And they're both important. You both in both cases you have decisions to make. I would say the first decision, which kind of combination of dice you may get, you almost have you have more control of, because you decide how many you want to pull off the back to start with. And then which ones you want to put back. Once you roll them, you are pretty much in for the ride. And I guess unless you spend resources to re-roll, you just get what you get and you don't get upset if you can. That's all this is fun. I like it. I like the fact that you decide the sleep track that you want to. You want to choose how long you want to go and how you use certain effects. In multiplayer games, by which I mean with more than 2 players, when you use an effect, you can also target who is going to be the victim of that effect. I like these elements. I like those decisions. They are simple, but they are rewarding. They are satisfying. And I also like the way the dice look. I mean, to me, they're stunning, and I like the way the other components look. I wish that they were a little sturdier, that the material was a little stronger, but that's, and you just need to be careful with those. So gameplay to me has some really fun, nice elements. So you're rolling dice, hoping to get good stuff, choose the order in which you want to activate the effect, try not to become a nightmare, or try to become a nightmare, which that is what you decide, but it is to say, as you're choosing to specialize a certain color or to keep your options open. It is also interesting that you will sometimes one of the negative effects that you can have is that you may lose dice from the ones that you already have in your power track, that is victory points. When that happens, you need to pull a die from the bag simply to indicate the color, and then you lose all of your power dice. Again, that is your victory point dice of that color. So diversifying on that track is very important, because then if you are unlucky in that department, then you only lose one power die, maybe one victory point, as opposed to, well, all of my dice on the track are yellow and now I pulled yellow and from 10 points I'm down to 0 to 1. So of course that may never happen, and I'm just hoping to always pull those other effects when that kind of situation occurs. So I like that element too. Where I have mixed feelings and where the game may be derailed a little bit is in the role of the nightmares. I'm not convinced on the way the nightmares and dreamers interact. To start with, I'm not a big fan, this is just a personal thing, of games where your role changes entirely throughout the game. It kind of like spoils the arc. I like to see my character, or in any case my player board, my set of resources, develop, change, be challenged, be reduced a little bit, but I like to see a certain progression rather than I may be going sort of flat for a while and then I become someone else entirely, my gameplay changes entirely. It's something that I always find anticlimactic and just not my thing really. And here turning into a nightmare is completely random. Yes, you might be able to mitigate that, but you may turn into a dream turn 1 or turn 2 just because you drew 5 blue dice, you put 2 back, but then you still have 3 blue dice, you roll those 3 and those are 3 eyes, and there you go. You're a nightmare turn 1 or turn 2. So that may happen. You don't have really much control over that. I wish there was more control on that. You have a minimal degree, because one of the choices you can make at the end of your turn is to remove some of those dice. But again, when you're removing 1 die and there's a possibility of rolling 2, 3 of those results in a single turn, that mitigation is really not all that significant. So you don't have any control on when your style of play is going to change entirely. And my impression is then what you can do when you're at Nightmare changes pretty radically with the number of players that you have. With 2 players, it is not hard for the other player, if the other player is a Dreamer and you're a Nightmare, to starve the nightmare, because I start low by drawing 4 dice, put 2 in the bag, because basically once you become a nightmare of a certain color, I never want to draw dice of that color, because you can steal them from me. You can use those effects. It's just there's no advantage for me in that department. Again, in the best case scenario, I score them as points that then you take from me. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna draw dice from the back, always put back the ones of your color, roll the other ones, and then when it is your turn, maybe you took some of those dice or all of the dice that I had of your color from my power track, and there's not that option of like consuming power is not open to you, because there are no consumable dice of your color for you. Then your only option to do is pull 2 dice from the bag, hope that one of them is your color, in which case you give it to me and we see what happens. But I've seen entirely that in 2 players games, I've seen that happening, that the non-Nightmare player virtually never rolls a die of the color of the Nightmare player. The Nightmare player rarely gets one of those dice. You may even use game effects to keep some dice on your board of the color of the opponent, but they're not from any of the board that the opponent can steal it from you. Therefore, that reduces the chances that dice of that color will be drawn. It is entirely possible for that. And I've seen the most anticlimactic game, that was the case. Player became a nightmare early on, 2-player game. Player became a nightmare early on. The Dreamer was able to starve the other player until the Dreamer almost all of a sudden, because of a real bad swing of luck, lost because the hunt row was filled. And so the Nightmare player won without almost having done nothing, without making almost no decisions in the game. Because, again, as a Nightmare, all it was doing, like, draw 2 dice, neither is mine, okay, that one, draw 2 dice, draw 2 dice, draw 2 dice, oh, I get a point, draw 2 dice. Oh, what do you mean I won? So that didn't work all that well. So with 2 players, it seems to me that being a nightmare can be problematic. With more players, the opposite is true. That is, then if there are 2 or 3 callers that have been taken by other players, it's virtually impossible for you, the poor remaining human dreamer, to do anything, because almost everything that you do, they're gonna steal those dice from you. In fact, it is very easy with more players to gang up against a single player. And that probably is not going to be all that fun for that player, definitely. That may even lead to a little bit of king making, like all the things being equal, I can steal from 2 players, and I just decide who is the player that I want to damage. Neither of them is going to give me much of a specific advantage, like, well, I need to hurt you so you don't win, more like neither of you is going to win, so I just don't like your hairstyle, I'm going to take it from you. You may have that kind of situation. At least the good thing with 2 players is that it's just business. You don't have the meta personal negative feelings thing, because my power is to steal from other players. Anybody? Oh yeah, it's a 2-player game, so I have to take it from you. Hey, it's not me, just the game. You're the only player I can steal from. At least you have that element that exonerates you from creating tensions there. But with more players and your chance of the possibility of choosing whom you're going to hurt next, that may lead to a little bit of king making and may lead to a little bit of bad blood, to some players being functionally kicked out of the game, although they're still there drawing and rolling. In effect, they're not making any progress because all of their stuff is still stolen. And I can't see players going on and say, whoa, what a blast I had. So you have that problem. Again, that doesn't have to happen. That doesn't have to happen. You have 2-player games where a player becomes a nightmare later on, and then you still have some interesting interactions. You may have a situation with multiple players in which you do not have the ganging up situation, you do not have the king making situation, but it's just a game that is in that sense unreliable. I like the basic mechanics, but they're just situations that may emerge from different directions, anticlimactic victories due to sudden losses from other players, king making, ganging up situations. You have a nice core of ideas there, but then again, it can be derailed by various circumstances. So that is why Lucidity to me is sometimes a good game, sometimes a disappointing game. It's short, there is that, so if you get a disappointing game, then you can play it again, but maybe you get 2 or 3 of these games disappointing in a row for one reason or the other, and then maybe you are gonna play another push your luck game that is more reliable, to the least. Like, well, I lost, yes, because of Lady Luck, but because I pushed my luck too much, or I didn't push it enough. As opposed to here, you pretty much may be kicked out of the game functionally, that is, you may become unable to do much, with very little responsibility on your part, because someone else, again, became a nightmare early on, they can steal your stuff, or became a nightmare early on, and you're starving them for resources. So I have mixed feelings about this. I like it when it goes well, I don't like it at all when it doesn't go well, which is less trivial than it sounds. I guess it's less obvious than it sounds, because you do have a lot of games that have more checks and balances that are built into the system, and so the game tends to have a variety of outcomes, but that don't lead to the game kind of like falling apart because of that situation. They have a more reliable range of possible outcomes. Lucidity, in my opinion, is not one of these ones. It's a good game. I really like the basic idea. I wish there were more checks and balances in the design. I like the basic idea. I like the way it looks. I would say it's a good game when it goes well. It's a good game, but it's somewhat an unreliable good one.